They read it, they watch it, and they play it so that you don't have to. Join Rod, Owen, and me, Keegan, as we open the bag of picks.
Once again, America saving the day, pulling you guys up from the dredges of obscurity. Hancock's is going to distribute Tootsie Rolls as of 2021. So you could go out and get one right now. You could catch up with the civilized world, Owen, and experience Tootsie Rolls.
Now, Owen, I do want to point out something. The Tootsie Rolls, like the brown packaging chocolate ones, they're good. But if you want a next level experience, that blue one that's vanilla flavored, that is goated.
Yeah.
Right, okay. I will, before we record next, I'm gonna go out and I'm gonna find Tootsie Rolls somewhere, and I'm gonna have I'm gonna have one just to
Do not taste them before the record. I want to
Okay.
see reaction on film. This is episode 2 of Bag of Picks, where we pick things so you don't have to. We play, watch, and read through the trash and bring you just the cream of the crop. I'm Rod, and I'm joined by Owen and Keegan. Fellas, what's new? You didn't know I hit record already, did you?
I did not know that you hit record.
I've just found out that apparently I'm going to be eating Tootsie Rolls on camera.
Yeah, and now you have to because it's going on there. That's on the record.
Oh, man. Oh. Gun Game just dropped in the new Call of Duty finally. So my friends and I spent the morning yelling at each other, calling each other horrible names while playing Gun Game.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
As it should be.
Yeah.
What about you, Owen? What did you do today?
Today I went and watched the new Ant-Man movie.
So, which side of the camp are you on? Is it a good movie, or is the MCU in shambles?
I enjoyed it. I thought it was good. It was fun. It was enjoyable. It had some interesting moments and some interesting choices, but when doesn't a film have some choices that you disagree with? So I enjoyed it. I had fun.
That's awesome.
I don't see what people are complaining about.
It's trendy to complain about the MCU right now.
Well, that's very true.
I mean, judging off of what the people that I tend to trust in my, life have said about it, it's not that it's a bad movie, it's that it's a fine movie. That's what I've heard, at least.
I can agree with that.
I only make it to the movie theaters about once a year right now, maybe twice a year. And it's going to be even less starting this summer, so I have not seen it yet. But
yeah,
I'll check it out when it hits Disney+.
There you go.
Exactly.
Little preamble in case you're somehow just joining us on episode 2. We talked last week about, instead of doing our usual, however usual it could be after one episode, we are each bringing 3 of our favorites to talk about, to kind of give y'all a taste of who we are before you start trusting our opinions on stuff. And I'll say, I don't know that these are all my favorites so much as kind of taste definers. Like, they're things that influenced my tastes growing up, so.
Grab your joysticks. It's time to pick some games.
Right off the top of things, I want to say everything I'm going to talk about isn't my absolute favorites, because I'm going to want to talk about those at different points. But these are all things that I do really, really like, and I don't often get big of a chance to talk about.
I think that's a great way to look at it.
So up first for games, I'm a big fan of fighting games. Always have been. And while I was growing up, the main ones sort of talked about were Street Fighter, Tekken, Mortal Kombat. I'm not talking about any of those. Today I will be talking about DOA, Dead or Alive.
Every boy who went through puberty went through a DOA phase.
I love DOA. I first started with DOA 2 in like a random back alley arcade on a seafront. And I was blown away with how like fluid the movements were compared to other fighting games I had played, and
Plus the jiggle physics. Admit it, you were into the jiggle physics.
I am admitting to no such thing. But that was a game that at that point was released in 2000s, and at at that point I was playing it in 2012, 13, so it was already quite old at that point.
Yeah.
But it moved and it worked in a way that I had never seen a video game or a fighting game like that move. And I then immediately went home and played through any DOA game I could get my hands on. And I have been an avid fan of all of them ever since.
That's awesome.
That's cool. I've always wanted to get deeper into the fighting game community,
Yeah.
if you will. But I feel like it's one of those things where, like, once you hit a certain age of not being deep into it, the barrier for entry is higher than I have the patience to put up with.
No, that's absolutely true, I think. And yeah, I missed the boat too. My oldest brother was really into Street Fighter 2 because I'm ancient. So we got like, I remember he got each version on the Super Nintendo as they came out, and we were really into those. It's funny. I always think of Dead or Alive, the beach volleyball one, as like this perfect time capsule of how far pop culture's kind of devolved in the last 20 years. Because I remember everyone was up in arms over like, it's a video game with girls in bikinis playing beach ball. There's no fighting. They're not ripping heads off. They're just playing volleyball in skimpy outfits. And like, that was the most degrading thing people could think of back then. And then now, like, you look on the internet and 10-year-olds are finding worse stuff with parental filters turned on. So
yeah, I also think it's worth mentioning the absolutely fantastic Dead or Alive movie that was released in 2006.
That's an Uwe Boll masterpiece, right?
Oh yeah,
yeah, love me some Uwe Boll.
That film is certainly something. Certainly something.
I don't know if it would have been 2 or 3. I had one of the Dead or Alive on the original Xbox, and I definitely enjoyed it. But that's probably the depth of my experience with the franchise, really.
Yeah.
So similarly to Owen, aside from my number ones, which I do consider like my all times, the rest of mine will be kind of nebulous. I love these things and they define a lot of my taste. But for games, my number one, the thing is,
you're starting with the big dog?
I thought, you know what? I
thought you were going to build to it. No, start with the big dog. Start with
big dog. Big dog. So the thing with the big dog for me is anytime I think maybe I enjoyed another game more, I realize to myself it's impossible. Because this game and its sequel, I played each of them more than 20 times apiece to completion. And that is Knights of the Old Republic and Knights of the Old Republic 2, The Sith Lords. I have literally played each of those games more than 20 times. So, by law of numbers, that has to be my favorite video game of all time. I've always been a Star Wars kid. I love Star Wars with everything in my heart. I love all the Star Wars. These games were just such a unique experience to me when I was growing up, playing a video game that worked very much like a tabletop game, right? Because you had to like essentially, yes,
my boy,
you had to essentially like roll your hits and things like that. You know, it was a transformative experience for me on what video games can be. It was the first video game I ever owned on an Xbox. And so I think that although, you know, there's a lot of problems around the Star Wars fandom and people that love Knights of the Old Republic, you know, there's some rather vocal subsets that I'm not a huge fan of. I still have like a deep love for those games, and one of my best friends and I, like, our big experience bonding was being like, oh, have you played with this combination of things yet? Have you romanced this person yet? Have you figured out how to do this weird thing yet? You know, there was that kind of experience. And I think that's why I love those games and why I have such a connection to BioWare as well.
Yeah. So spoiler, KOTOR didn't make my list, but because my list evolved into the like influence on my overall taste instead of like pure favorites. If I had to make like a gun to my head an actual list of my top 3 favorites, KOTOR would probably be on there. I always will remember the summer that I traded into Game Crazy because they offered me slightly more store credit than GameStop, my PlayStation 2 and all of my games, and I don't even remember everything else. But I was getting an Xbox and I was getting Knights of the Old Republic. And a lot of times when you make a big move like that as a kid, it doesn't pay off, but that paid off. HK47 is still probably the most I've ever laughed at a video game. Just, yeah, KOTOR is such a good choice right there. I don't know if I've hit 20 times, but between the PC port and the phone port, I'm probably not far behind you. I've replayed that game probably more than the first one, more than any game.
Yeah.
I've probably not replayed the second as much because I'll never forgive it being unfinished. Like the fact that they couldn't just spend 6 more months and give us the rest of the story, I'll never forgive. But
They do have a restored content mod on the internet. And
I don't know that I've ever played it.
It works.
Does it feel like it's the actual ending BioWare would have given it, or not really?
You know, it's something. It's
or not BioWare because BioWare
it technically Obsidian. It's still good. Like it's
Okay.
good. It's just, you know, it's kind of interesting just to see what it could have been in these pieces, you know.
Yeah.
But it's not that entirely hugely transformative.
I still really like 2. One will always be the masterpiece for me.
I liked number 2 because you could get, you know, my man Bayodur, the
That's fair.
Zabrak.
Yeah.
So.
There was lots of good stuff in 2.
All right. So I have been back and played through some of the Star Wars games that might have been a little bit before I was playing video games. And as much as I love Knights of the Old Republic, I always preferred Jedi Outcast.
Mm-hmm.
The ones with Kyle Katarn.
Yeah, those were great games too.
Yeah.
If you go looking, like my usernames before I took the ThatNerdyPapaBear handle, for a long time, the handle I went by was Katarnish. And when I worked at the movie theater, there was kind of the 2 cliques. There was the folks who worked the front of the house and the people that ran projectors. And just culturally, somehow I ended up really good buddies with both groups. And as I kind of took over some management roles, they all, because they carried specific flashlights on their belts, the projectionists all called themselves Jedi. And one of them one day just made the joke that, like, you're not a Jedi, but you know all our tricks, Rod. You're like kind of like Kyle Katarn. You're Katarnish. And that name stuck for like 15 years until now. I hardly talk to any of those guys, so it didn't make sense as like a title anymore. But was Jedi Outcast the one with multiplayer, or was that Jedi Academy?
I think Jedi Academy was the one with.
Okay. Whichever one introduced multiplayer was probably the most like couch co-op I played, or like couch multiplayer I played in whatever that would have been, my freshman or sophomore year of high school. Like every weekend, me and one buddy played the dual mode of, I think it was Academy, but yeah, whichever Jedi game that was really fun. So all of my like first picks are going to be like older, and then I went chronologically a little bit. And like I said, these are like taste definers. So my first video game pick it's a twofer. It's Donkey Kong Country and Donkey Kong Country 2. So it was my absolute first pop culture obsession. The year before I went to kindergarten, I think, my oldest brother went away for Easter break and took his Super Nintendo, and it really was his. He bought it, but that meant I had spring break with nothing to play. And it's like the only time my mom has ever done anything like this. When she saw that I was depressed We went to Target and she bought me a family Super Nintendo, so he couldn't just take it with him, and a copy of the first Donkey Kong Country. And then I remember riding the bus and talking with kids about like, oh, my mom's gonna get me Donkey Kong Country 2. No, my mom's gonna get me Donkey Kong Country 2. But then like none of us actually told our parents we wanted this game. We just all like had imagined that we were gonna come home to this game having been bought. And so it was like a year after it came out, I finally got it at a yard sale. But these games really influenced me in a lot of good ways and a lot of bad ways with my video game tastes like going forward, because one, they taught me that soundtrack can define an experience, because those soundtracks are the single greatest pieces of music ever created. There's like a handful of songs there that literally could go up against Mozart and would probably win a poll. Like they're classical masterpieces made with chip tunes. It's fantastic. But it also, in a lot of ways, because, if you put a gun to my head, I'm going to choose these over Mario games that are unquestionably structurally better. But because I fell in love with these first, I will always choose style over substance in certain regards. And they exude style. From the moment you put the first Donkey Kong Country in and hit play, you're hit with hip, cool Donkey Kong holding the boombox, knocking his stupid grandpa off of a balcony or whatever or a porch, and Diddy Kong with his baseball cap, just like the cool kid. I didn't include Donkey Kong Country 3 because I think it is a clear step down, but it is a fun game. But the first two Donkey Kong Countries will forever, to me, define what 2D platforming could be at its peak. Just fun, bouncy music, pretty much infinite number of like bonus areas and like you never weren't finding a secret. If you held a barrel and just ran, you were eventually going to find a secret mini game or a secret bonus. And it inspired replay, it inspired exploration for like developing minds. It just gave my imagination a runway to take it and barrel forward.
Absolutely. I have to agree with you. Donkey Kong Country is my first video game I ever played.
Yeah.
My dad and I used to play them together after school on Super Nintendo, and I love them. And the music alone is just such a nostalgia bomb and takes me somewhere very warm and familiar. So I'm right there with you. I love those games so much.
Pick number 2. So I have also gone for a another game from my great British childhood. And
Tea and Crumpets Simulator.
this is a similar pick to Keegan's Star Wars pick, in the fact that it's from a previously established big name thing, and my game is Gotham City Imposters.
Really?
When
I heard the word Gotham, that was not what I expected to follow.
No, I loved Gotham City Imposters growing up. It was I assume you've both heard of it, right?
I have heard of it. That is the extent of my knowledge.
I heard of it and I played it for about a day and a half.
So I put a little bit more time into it than that, just a little bit, and I really, really loved this game, and at this point, this was even before I had grown to love comic books and superheroes. I was just playing this because I thought it was cool. I liked the controls. The music as I was playing it was funky. There was a mean man with a crowbar on the cover on the home screen. I enjoyed it, and I desperately want a revival of Gotham City Imposters, because me and my stepbrother would play it, and I loved it.
That is so interesting. I that's
Somehow,
a cool choice.
as a lifelong comic book fan, I completely missed this corner of wow.
It was like a free to play arena game, right? Like at least in that vein.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah,
Cool.
it was it was my like first personal experience with like online games, because before that I had never like played a proper online shooter. That was my first one, and it really, I think, set the bar high.
I love
We're
that
still
choice,
early,
though.
but that
That's
might be get
fun.
my tip of the hat for like the hottest take or like the most surprising take. Wow.
I
Would
like
not
it
have
though. That's a
expected.
fun take.
I'm gonna check it out. I mean, I don't know if it was free to play. I don't know if it's even accessible anymore.
Oh,
But
I'm sure the servers are dead now, right?
Yeah, I sadly don't think the game exists anymore.
well, I'll watch some YouTube videos then. All right, Keegan, what is your second pick?
Number 2, coming from the minds at BioWare, Mass Effect, the series, of course. I think for me, it's like if KOTOR was like my early teens, Mass Effect was my late teens, early 20s, as far as like things that I love that defined what I love about science fiction.
Yeah.
Um and so I think that's why I have to say Mass Effect. And it's funny because like the first time I played Mass Effect, I played the first game, I got to the end and I was like, yeah, it was pretty good. And then when the second one was coming out, I played through it again. And I was like, oh wait, no, this game isn't good. This game is phenomenal. And then the second one came out and I love the second one. It's probably my favorite of the series. And controversial hot take, I love the third one. I think the ending of the third one is good and fine. But you
Oh,
know,
the third one's ending getting as much flag as it did is definitely one of those like early the internet is wrong kind of like vibes for sure.
yeah. You know, and then like if it's not your cup of tea, it's not your cup of tea, that's fine. But I've always been a staunch defender of number 3 in the ending. Not as big on Andromeda. I don't have as much love for Andromeda, but that's okay. I love everything about Mass Effect. Really, more than anything to me, is the cast of characters that you bring on to your ship with you, which is also, I think, part of what I love so much about KOTOR is like all the companions. So much so that I have a tattoo of Subject Zero. So
That yeah, so two to me is the best for sure because one had like some chances to like lose certain characters along the way, but it was very limited. And the best thing they did with two, other than fix the combat system, but the two like was completely open ended. You could get to the end and be the only member of your crew left standing, or you could weave the perfect path and make it to the end with everybody alive. And I loved that about it so much. And um, yeah, I think that's a really solid pick. I just realized I don't have a single true RPG on my list, and that just shows how like hard it is to come up with to narrow it to just 3 games. But
yeah.
I will never forget playing through the original Mass Effect trilogy, like where I was playing through each one. Again, I was Rod the skeptic with the first one of like, why would I want to play like the game the KOTOR team made where they just don't have the KOTOR license, so you have to make up fake Star Wars. I'm sure it'll suck. And then loving it. And then 2 was absolutely mind blowing. I will admit I couldn't even finish Andromeda. So like I'm really hoping 5 can bring back whatever 4 was lacking for me. But I made it about 3 hours in and gave up. But I love 2, love 3. Great trilogy, great pick.
Oh yeah.
I also never finished Andromeda.
Yeah, I just I think there was something there, and they just couldn't quite
Yeah.
bring it together. Because I tried to replay Andromeda after the Legendary Edition of the trilogy came out,
Yeah.
and it just
All right, gentlemen. Who's Shepard's true love? Which romance is like canon for you?
Are we talking My Shepherd? What I believe should be canon for everyone? What's the talk here?
I mean, in your heart of hearts, aren't those two answers the same? Like,
No, they are absolutely different.
really?
So when I play Mass Effect, as I am wont to do, the first time I play a Mass Effect game, I choose by my gut instinct, and it is if I were Commander Shepard going through the story.
Okay.
My second playthrough is crafting my perfect story. And that's two different stories that I have going in my Mass Effect playthroughs.
And in those two, he's banging different women, or they are banging different partners.
Correct.
Interesting.
Me,
Well, I want both answers then.
me, if it was Keegan Shepard, so to speak, it is Jack, subject 0. Hence why I have a picture of her on my thigh. However, in my perfect canon, this is what Mass Effect should be if it were a movie playthrough. Shepard is a female who romances Garrus.
Okay.
So,
you get it right, Owen?
Yeah. So I speak for me and and my partner when I say Garrus is probably my choice, and I have a funny feeling it would be their choice too.
Interesting.
His
I'm
voice
going
is
on.
just so hot.
I'm probably a basic B, but to me, the
Oh,
most
no.
satisfying to play through is the Talizora romance.
Oh, okay. That's fine.
Okay. Yeah.
That's fine.
That to me, that's always the.
I
Because
was so worried you were about to say Miranda. I was
Oh,
so
God, no.
worried.
No. Fuck that racist. No.
Ashley is the racist. Miranda is the genetically perfect one.
That's a lot of words to say racist.
Yeah. Yeah. If you met them both in a bar, they're both gonna be hanging out with the bikers, if you know what I mean.
That's fair. Yeah, no, so that's why I have to say though, like I have two different ones because I play two different. I was just gonna say a close third place is Thane Krios, but
Ooh.
I really like Thane. So.
Okay.
But I also, I'm the guy that had a V for Vendetta and Boondock Saints kick as a teenager. So his whole assassin spiel like really resonated with me.
My second game choice, again, mine. This is more super influential games that like have defined my tastes along the way. Is Metal Gear Solid 3, because
Ooh.
for many years, I am a dad now and will cry at almost anything. So the list has grown. But for well over a decade, almost 2 full decades, I could say this is the only video game to ever make me cry. I'm getting choked up just thinking about the ending of this game. So it's Hideo Kojima's third in the Metal Gear Solid franchise, and you had him redefine what stealth video games were on the PlayStation 1, and then everyone fell in love with Solid Snake, and you had Metal Gear Solid 2, where he pulled the infamous bait and switch, and you got stuck playing as Raiden for the majority of the game. And I think Metal Gear Solid 2 is really picked on. But anyways, you finally get to the third game, and suddenly you're back in the 60s playing a like James Bond level like theme song, Vietnam War era, like in the jungle, wear camouflage, spy. You look just like Solid Snake because you're his genetic progenitor. You go into it expecting a pretty campy, silly game, and like every single fight is like a treatise on what mortality and death means. Like, there's a guy that you can kill just by changing the internal clock of the PlayStation, because his gimmick is he's an old man sniper that's like on death's door anyways. So if you get to the fight and then you move the timer on the PlayStation up, like, you can turn the game on and he's just died of old age and your character pushes him over. There's a guy that the entire boss fight is he pulls you into like the world between lives, and you walk along a river and have to pass everybody you've killed. So if you've had like a machine running gun run, you're walking up this river with just hundreds of corpses walking by you. Or if you've done a true stealth run, it's like a real quick just jaunt because you don't have anybody you're passing. Throughout the game, it makes you confront what it means to die a whole bunch of different ways. And then in the end, big spoiler, you have to kill your mentor and implied love interest, who you're led to believe has betrayed you. And then the end of the game, you find out, oh no, like, she was on your side all along, and it was a big, like, she had to sacrifice herself basically, and you had to be the one to pull the trigger. And then it hits you with like the saddest credit song in the world, and it breaks any human being down into a sniveling, crying little baby. And for, like I said, almost 20 years, it was the only game to make this guy cry. And now there's been probably 20, because I cry in sad episodes of sitcoms now, because as soon as you have a child, your brain chemistry absolutely changes.
Man, first of all, I don't even have a kid, and commercials can make me cry. So I cry at bulking everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, Hideo Kojima, genius, absolute mastermind. So I get it.
Yeah. Death Stranding could have been on this list. So many of his games could have been on this list. But
Still haven't played Death Stranding. Keep meaning to. Haven't gotten around to it yet.
it's a time vacuum for sure.
Yeah.
It's on my list. I love it. I love the idea of it with Norman Reedus and everything, but got to get there eventually.
So I struggled a lot picking my last game. The first two were sort of big games I've loved since childhood. This one's a bit different because it's a remake, but I did play the games while I was growing up, but it was the remakes that really made me sink hundreds of hours.
Where are we going here, Owen?
This, I am of course talking about Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2.
Solid choice.
I pre-ordered the remake for the PlayStation 4, and it came out the day that I moved to my uni accommodation where I live now. So I remember blitzing through unpacking everything as fast as I humanly could, specifically so I could play through Pro Skater and install it. And that night, I didn't sleep. I played it from 5:30 in the evening until 8 o'clock in the morning. Just near constant, and I have never regretted it. That was a core gaming experience for me.
Absolutely. Those games are phenomenal. Like, the
Yeah.
soundtrack alone would earn them a spot in my top games of all time.
I have a T-shirt that says like, "You're not cool unless you're listening to the Tony Hawk Pro Skater soundtrack." Because yeah,
I love it.
It's so cool to me hearing someone that had like a core gaming experience with the remakes, because I remember 3rd, 4th grade. That was, if you went to a friend's house, it was what Tony Hawk were we playing. Like the cool kids were had 2 and we had 1, or like that was gaming in like certain corners of the playground for a solid 5 or 6 years. I'm really surprised. It's been a couple years now, right? Like, it's been 2 years since the remakes came out. Close to that.
2-3 years, yeah.
When are we getting like the follow-up Tony Hawk's 3-4 remake announcement? Because 3 had the best soundtrack of them all. I loved the soundtrack to 3. Had some of the best levels. And it's really interesting with how well that sold, because that game sold like bonkers.
Oh,
That was
yeah.
everywhere when it first came out. That they haven't followed up on it yet. It's insane to me, because that's such an obvious, whether you do it as DLC or you do a separate game, it's insane to me they didn't follow up. All right, Keegan, your final choice. Is this another
Okay.
BioWare?
No,
Did
actually.
you go all BioWare?
Surprisingly,
maybe?
it's not Dragon Age, and it's not Jade Empire.
Or Anthem?
Or never Anthem. So I agonized over what my third was going to be. And I have a list here of like number 3 and then like game. Because I was like, I'm going to have to pick it on the fly. Most of them are RPGs. I am going to break my RPG streak and go with something that's not an RPG. And I am going to say Halo 2. Halo 2. Really any of the Halo games, but I'm going to say 2. 2 is like the definitive Halo experience in my mind. And not even for the campaign, though the campaigns are marvelous. It's the multiplayer.
Yeah.
It redefined multiplayer gaming. And I think that that's a huge part of it. And the ability to just jump on and do all these custom match types with your friends and just talking smack, and then you get into other like public lobbies and you end up talking smack with those people, and it's like, oh, let's all make a party and just all of us play now for 4 hours. Like, it was such a cool, fun experience. And
awesome.
I have a lot of love for the Halo series and the music. Much to my partner's chagrin, if I even think of the Halo theme, I start singing the like Gregorian monk chanting of it all. Like, and I can't not do it to completion. I'll just start going.
Yeah.
And she knows like she can't stop it. So she might as well just let it happen.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I definitely played a lot of Halo multiplayer over the years, but I never got as into it as I probably should have. Like, I at some point need to go in and play the campaigns through, and I'm just not the world's biggest first-person shooter guy. But
That's
man, the Halo mythology is really cool. Like, I've always really dug the aesthetic and the look of it, and I need to jump in someday.
So, I have a slight disagreement with something that was said. I agree with everything you said, with the exception of what the definitive Halo experience is.
Ooh, hit me.
Because, in my opinion, it's Halo Reach.
Oh, you know what? I can give you that. Reach is incredible.
And I almost picked Reach for my third game, but I have so much love for Halo 2, but Halo Reach was one of those ones that I don't think I'm ever going to play a game like Halo Reach.
That's fair. I think if I was picking off of merit of story alone, I would have gone with Reach. But for the multiplayer in my like teen years, that's why I had to lean too. But like story-wise, absolutely Reach.
I get that.
If we're all naming our definitive Halo experiences,
oh man,
I'm gonna argue for Red versus Blue Season 3, because the guys were into what they were doing and they were like fully in it, but it hadn't jumped the shark yet. So
Season 3. I do love Red versus Blue. Like, what a brilliant thing to come out of Halo existing. Also, like, I think I'm gonna bring this eventually as a thing, but the ads for Halo 3, the ad campaign,
okay.
Yeah.
I don't know if I remember the ads for Halo 3.
They were like live action documentaries, and it was like,
Yeah.
do you remember the battle? And it was like these old veterans that are all like scarred up, and they're like, I remember where I was when Master Chief armed his grenade, and it was so. Oh, I got goosebumps just now talking about it.
Okay. Yeah, you'll have to bring that at some point. My third pick. Like I said, these are all things that have over the years defined my tastes, and I spent the vast majority of my life hating casual games. I know it's an interesting thing for me to say because I didn't include any on this list, but I have been a majority role-playing gamer my whole life. Like, I was playing through Final Fantasies, Breath of Fire, like the majority of the 90s. I came home from school and I sat down and I put 3 hours into a random role-playing game out of Japan. And I always thought cell phone games were just a waste of time. I was never into flash games. It was just always really hard for me to care about a super casual gaming experience until I had a kid. And suddenly, like, short burst gaming was a really important thing for me. And I fell into, on Game Pass, a game called Slay the Spire, which was labeled a roguelike. And I couldn't get into any of the roguelikes that had been popular over the years. You know, people would really try to get me into, what's the kind of grotesque one where you're like the fetus and
Binding of Isaac.
Binding of Isaac. People tried to really get me into Binding of Isaac. It starts over every time. Why would I want to play a game that, like, every time I die, I have to start at the very beginning? That seemed really stupid. But Slay the Spire was a deck builder, and that's some of my favorite card games. Like, my wife and I'll probably bring this if I ever decide to do board games for my gaming. Like, Dominion was one of the first things we played on, like, our third or fourth date. It was the first card game we ever played. I love those deck builders that you build in the game. Not like I don't mind like stuff like Magic, but I like sitting down and not having a pre-built deck. There's something about that mechanic, and this was it in video game form, and it's got the trappings of a role-playing game because you're literally monster fighting your way up a tower to beat the big baddie of the top of the spire. And it somehow completely rewrote the way I look at casual gameplay loops and roguelike gaming. And I looked, and the only game on my Switch I have more hours on is Mario Kart because we played it as a family, and I'm at like over 500 hours on that, but I'm over 300 hours on Slay the Spire just because I sit and I play that game whenever we're like watching TV or whatever. And it's now moved because Slay the Spire has kind of inspired a whole genre of other card-based roguelikes now because it was so popular when it hit. And so I don't play it as much now. I play a lot of games inspired by it, but it fundamentally, probably more than any other game, definitely during my adult years, changed the way I look at video games because now I have an appreciation and a love for simple, repetitive gameplay loops that I would have probably scoffed at 10 years ago as a waste of time. Either of you play Slay Spire ever?
I haven't, but I know for a fact it's on my play later list on Game Pass.
It's on Game Pass, and I think it's on the PlayStation one now too. The PlayStation whatever, blah blah blah. But it's been on Game Pass since it first came out. Yeah.
It's definitely like on my radar, and I want to play it. I've just never gotten around to it, and my backlog is massive.
Huge. Yeah. I mean, the nice thing is it's not a giant game because it is just card based, so you could have it installed, and it's definitely the kind of thing that you could, when you just have 10 minutes to heal, try a single playthrough and you'd get a vibe for what the game's like.
Dust off your reading glasses and check out what we read this week.
I've just seen my list. Okay, so
That's worrisome when your list makes you giggle.
Well, you'll see why. Up first, we have one of the first like non-Marvel and DC comics I ever read, and it was recommended to me in a hushed whisper by the man who
Promethea.
by the man who ran our local comic store, and he very, very quietly explained the plot to me, which I now realize why he did, because if he had explained this plot to a 14-year-old kid out loud, it would have looked very dodgy. I am, of course, talking about Sex Criminals.
Ah, yes.
That's a great book. Also,
I
a great
love...
time for my 3-year-old to wander in the room.
1 minute, 37 seconds later.
Oh, I bet he picked up Sex Criminals.
Yeah.
This Sex Criminals?
Yes, I have
I
that
will never-
on my shelf down there.
I will never get over the fact that they labeled the hardcovers big, hard Sex Criminals. It's
Yes, and the fake cover that it has underneath.
I don't think I'd ever looked.
It's
So all-
it.
Do all
It's-
3 volumes have a different joke? Is that?
I haven't got the later volumes of Big Hard Sex Criminals, but I am meaning to. So when I find out, I'll let you know. But
Oh, you keep talking. We're gonna find out right now. You keep talking.
okay, okay. But I I can't get over that you never knew that. Let's have a look.
You keep talking.
So I read these when I was about 14, maybe 15,
Okay.
and I was definitely too young to read them, and they definitely shaped my sense of humor. They
So- I don't. Oh, that's amazing. I don't know if because I was dealing with a scene that will probably get cut out if you covered. To be clear, it's not actually about sex criminals in the way the name makes it sound. It is a book about people who can stop time by having sex. So they have sex and then do criminal acts. It's not like he wasn't 14 reading a book about rape.
What
No.
else could a sex criminal be? It's the only...
Exactly.
All right, I'm going to show you these real quick. Not to like bulldoze you, but these
Yeah, of
are
course.
really good, Owen. You're going to love these. All right, so this is volume 2, the international #2 bestseller, No Strings Attached, using apps and online profiles to get hot local, felt moist and sticky. And it's got a like abused looking Muppet on the cover. And again, fake Matt Fraction and Chip Zdarsky misspelled names. So Matt Frauen and Chip Zdarsky. And then volume 3, definitely the best. That is a picture of naked Chip Zdarsky spooning Matt Fraction. Why did our wives leave? Making sense of the mystery of you and your best chum's newly single life. By Matt Fraction, Chip Zdarsky, and their underpaid psychotherapists.
That's incredible.
I love that. That's great. I read these books when I was far too young to read them, and they definitely shaped my
Sense of humor.
sense of humor now. But they really also led to my love of Chip Zdarsky as a writer and Matt Fraction.
Absolutely. I love Matt and Chip. They're both so phenomenal. Like
That's something really interesting about them is when it first started, Matt Fraction was a known entity. Chip Zdarsky wasn't. He was a Canadian like newspaper cartoonist, and that was pretty much all he was known for. And so the first half of the book, it was literally just labeled written by Matt Fraction, drawn by Chip Zdarsky, and it wasn't until they were getting further along that it kind of became just created by and had both their names on it, and it became really obvious that they were both involved in the entire process.
Mm.
And it's really neat to see his career take off the way it did, because you could really watch the through line of like, yeah, he's funny. we saw how funny he is here, and now he's writing like the two biggest, most prestigious, like known for being dark superhero books. He's writing Batman and Daredevil. Like that through line is so cool, I think that's an amazing, awesome pick, and it's really cool. And I just want to throw out there, we're making a lot of jokes about, oh, he was too young to read it, and there is mature humor in there, but it also kind of has a really positive, like sex positive message through a lot of it, and it's, I don't know. Like, actually, I think it probably was a better influence than it seems like it was, because it's got a lot of really nice moral lessons to it in a way.
I can agree to that, absolutely.
Yeah.
With some fucked up humor.
Yeah, there's definitely worse things I could have been doing with my time at age 15.
Absolutely.
Okay, so
refrain from a joke. Go ahead, Keegan.
I, by virtue of the fact that we sing the praises of the X-Men every week, refused to bring an X-Men book to this show today. For my
none of mine are X-Men related for that same reason.
I say that because I feel like, if I'm being honest with myself, Exterminators would make my list. But
and mine.
Yeah. Exterminators, the miniseries that just ended, you think would make an all-time list already for you?
Yes.
Wow. I really loved it, but like I
genuinely I recommend that book to people more than anything else anymore. I genuinely do
too, but more for accessibility and like.
But that's why it's an all-time great to me. That's because
really
of that.
Cool.
But because I just wanted to make that clear before I do my list here. Number 3, also from the beautiful mind of Matt Fraction, Hawkeye. Matt Fraction's run on Hawkeye with the art of David Aja is just, or is it Asia? Aja?
I always said Aja, but I'm a white dude from California, so I have a very particular pronunciation and everything.
But it's a phenomenal take on Hawkeye. It was the reason why, until my number 1 pick, which I bet nobody will ever be able to guess, it's the reason why Hawkeye was my favorite superhero for a while, is because of what Matt Fraction did. The humor is incredible. There's a lot of heart to it. And there's an entire issue told from the point of view of a dog.
Pizza Dog is so amazing.
Yeah.
Like, I think that it's incredible, and the art is phenomenal, and the fact that, it informed the Hawkeye TV show at least is pretty cool. It's great. My friend and I, we had an entire saga of us pretending to be Russian mafiosos and just saying bro at each other for entire conversations. I just, one of my greats, one of my all-time greats.
I will totally double stamp it's an all-time great. I love Hawkeye. I kind of categorize, I was just talking to someone about it today because they announced a reprint of the omnibus of Hawkeye, and I'm definitely getting it, that my brain, for whatever reason, I always associate like time periods with 1 or 2 books that are like the defining books of that era. And for me, like the first half of the 2010s are like defined as by the comic books. That Hawkeye by Fraction and Aja, and Daredevil by Mark Waid. To me, like if I think of anything from about 2010 to about 2014, like those are the 2 comics I associate with that time, because those were the comics I was most excited to get every week. Which, unless there's any more to say on Hawkeye, segues to my first pick, because I went with like super nostalgia from like early defining for my first pick again. And much like your final number 1 all-time pick, Keegan, everyone probably guesses mine. It's Flash by Mark Waid. It's like the comic that defined my childhood. It turned Wally West into, I consider, the greatest superhero of all time. It ran for 8 straight years, except for a short hiatus that was filled in by Grant Morrison and Mark Miller in what was also a really great run. So you can kind of lump that in there. And it's just a fantastic story about a young man who has to take up a mantle, and he ends up not only making it his own, but becoming a better version of that hero. It solidified 10-year, 8, 9, 10, 11-year-old Rod as forever a comic book fan. He turned Wally West from a frustratingly juvenile character. They were about to cancel the book. Like, Mark Waid was essentially an unknown and was allowed to do whatever the hell he wanted because they were going to cancel The Flash and bring Barry back just a couple years after killing him in Crisis on Infinite Earths, because sales and critical reviews of the first 50 issues of Flash were so bad. And he came in and he started it with an arc called Born to Run that was a retelling of Barry's origin, but also Wally's origin. And so he was able to, even though Barry was gone, he was able to establish what made Wally West special, what made Barry Allen special, what made the two characters different, and launch into an almost decade-long run of giving us high sci-fi stories with grounded, realistic interpersonal relationships. Gave him the best love interest, one of the best love interests in comics. On the surface, it looks like it's the classic like reporter turned love interest trope that is so common in comics, but she entered the comic as a legitimate like rival. They hated each other, and it wasn't forced. You didn't see it coming, but like they softened on each other and eventually fell in love to the point of having kids. They had Iris and Jai, and it's now being picked up by Jeremy Adams in what is one of the best comics today. But there was just something so special about it, and it's crazy to me that Mark Waid has continued to be an influential writer on my tastes every decade since, because he did Captain America and Fantastic Four in the 2000s, the Daredevil that I just talked about last decade, and now he's writing a whole bunch for DC, including Shazam that starts next month that everyone should check out because his Shazam is going to be amazing. And his current Batman Superman World's Finest is awesome. But he is one writer that has managed to consistently be amazing across 4, 5, if you count 1989 decades. And to me, that is breathtaking and amazing. But his best work is still his run on The Flash that everyone should read.
I don't think I can add to that.
I have nothing to add to that. That was beautiful.
Yeah, I can never top that.
I feel like I just rant too much. I'm sorry, guys.
That was absolutely beautiful.
That was
all
perfect.
right, Owen, follow that up.
Oh God, I've just realized. Let's talk about V for Vendetta. I enjoy V for Vendetta. I might even go as far to say I like it a lot. I know that not everyone likes this particular writer. I know that people have strong opinions on him. He's a little bit of an oddball, but V for Vendetta was something I read just sort of, off the cuff one day. I was like, there's a film of this, I'll read it. And I loved it, and I have never stopped thinking about that book ever since. That book awakened a lot of political beliefs in me. I'm not saying that I'm going to blow up Parliament in case any authorities are watching, but it's a good book.
I'll be honest with you. I also love V for Vendetta.
That's great.
When I said, that I had a V for Vendetta phase, I mean that I had a very online V for Vendetta phase as a teenager. As I became an adult, I grew away from that very online V for Vendetta phase, and now I enjoy it for the very good book and film that it is. Yeah, I loved it. I still think there's a lot of value to it, so I'm with you.
I'm now picturing this is our last episode of Bag of Pigs, because we're all gonna see online a picture of Owen being arrested in the Guy Fawkes mask, yelling, "It was just a joke! It was just a joke!"
It's okay. Ideas are bulletproof, so.
I am not the world's biggest Alan Moore fan. When you said, "Oh, I know not ever," I definitely prefer V for Vendetta Alan Moore over many other things he wrote. I feel like there was a purity to how defined of a story it was, so he didn't really get a chance to go off into his misogyny or like some of his other flaws because it was a tight story. And I feel like that's where Alan Moore stuff holds up the best, because when he's given a runway, he had a chance to espouse some beliefs that have only become more uncomfortable with time.
Yeah, I can definitely agree with that.
For my number 2, I am going to bring the the book that has me standing or sitting before you all today. Without this book, I would not be having any sort of comic TikTok presence or comic podcast. It is what brought me back into comics in 2020. Far Sector by N.K. Jemisin. Before getting on to any Venom or X-Men or Batman again or anything like that, my friend goes, "Hey man, remember when we used to have a comics podcast and we talked about comics?" And I was like, "Yeah, man, I do remember that." He said, "I think you should read this book because it's really, really good and I think you'd like it." And so I just started reading through all of Far Sector, and boy, did I just fall back in love. And because of that, he was like, "Hey, now you need to read all of this stuff that Hickman's doing, and you should read Cates's Venom." And now I'm here today. So that is why I have to bring Far Sector. It is just such a phenomenal story. And I think there's something to just the idea of this essentially space cop going way out into the unknown regions where there's this metropolis where no one has any feelings anymore. And the cop is the only one that can feel emotions and has to figure out all of this crime. It's just really good. And to have a black bisexual Green Lantern that kicks ass. I am a huge Sojourner Joe Mullane fan. I want more of her in everything.
Do you have Discord open right now, sir?
Yes.
Both of you open it right now and look at the latest Dawn of DC promotional art and tell me if tell me who you see.
I see Joe.
Yeah, she's on there.
Hell yeah.
There's also on the bottom left, I cannot figure out. It's one of the yeah, it looks like Captain Marvel or it's one of the super women, but she has the world's biggest 5 head, and I can't figure out why she's got male pattern baldness.
Yeah, that's an interesting choice.
Yeah, that's an egghead. Ooh.
Yeah, I'm really waiting to see the final version, like the unleaked version, to see if it's just like a weird coloration thing that happened. But anyways, if Joe's in promo art, that means she's probably showing up in the Jeremy Adams Green Lantern ongoing he's doing. That used to be called Green Lantern Hal Jordan, and they now just turned it to Green Lantern because he's going to be using a much larger cast. And I have faith in him. He's doing really great things with like Avery Ho and other diverse Flash family members. So there is hope. There is hope, Keegan. I love Far Sector.
Yeah.
Is that the only comic N.K. Jemisin ever wrote? I know she's constantly putting out more novels, and
I'm not sure.
I can't.
She needs to write more comics.
It's been a few years, so I'm wondering if either like she didn't like the way comic fans received her, or because all I heard was praise. I thought everyone loved Far Sector, so it's kind of amazing it's kind of a bummer to me that she hasn't done more yet, because she clearly gets it and would do really amazing things. Or maybe she just decided books are more fun.
Maybe.
Even if it was extremely well received, in situations like this, the loudest voices people usually hear are usually the ones screaming angry words and not very nice names.
That's very true.
And the comic fandom does have the ability to be more toxic than novel fans a lot of times.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. My number 2 is another one that probably will not shock long time ThatNerdyPapaBear fans. If we're going through eras of my life that just defined my taste, Batman by Grant Morrison is what brought me back in high school to being a superhero comic book reader, I fell off like many do in those high school years, just because you get other interests, you discover boobs, whatever it is. And uh, there are definitely parts of it that have not aged well, and I feel like Grant Morrison has now acknowledged some of them. Like Talia al Ghul goes through an arc that isn't necessarily considered true to the way she's portrayed elsewhere, but overall, what Grant Morrison does by coming in and essentially canonizing and paying tribute to the entire, at that point, 65-year history of the character through Batman RIP, the international team of like obscure Bat characters they bring in, and the Black Case book, just bringing in all of these things from, Batman of Zernar from the 60s, Batmite, and just bringing in all of these concepts and modernizing them over the first 4 years of writing the book, and just giving a prestige to who Bruce Wayne is and what it means to be Bruce Wayne, and then killing him and giving us a whole new version of what it means to be Batman by putting Dick Grayson under the cowl and showing us how Dick Grayson can be a better Batman than Bruce could ever be, and how he can raise Bruce Wayne's own son better than he ever could, because Bruce was unable to tame Damian, but almost immediately the duo of Damian and Dick Grayson as Batman and Robin just thrive. And then you bring Bruce Wayne back by torturing him unstuck from time in Return of Bruce Wayne, and when he comes back, having to deal with that dynamic of he's Batman and Dick is Batman, and you've got this international issue where he brings in the Batman Incorporated, and then they kind of kneecap him with the New 52, and so suddenly Dick is just Nightwing again, and we're ignoring half of what you built. But it still is this amazing, beautiful 10-year run that, in a lot of ways, for a long time, made it hard for me to care about any other Batman stories, because it felt like it said literally everything that needed to be said about Batman as a concept and as a character. And I wish every long-standing comic book character got a long tenure with someone that loved that character as much as Grant Morrison loves Batman. It just felt like a love letter, not just to a certain version of Batman, because we get like movies that are the perfect adaptation of, say, Batman Year One, where we get like the movie that represents all the darkest parts of Batman really well. Like, oh, that feels like Batman. Or you get a cartoon that captures like, oh, that's all of the camp that stands for that side of Batman. But Grant Morrison managed to lovingly pay tribute to the entire spectrum of what Batman ever meant, from the silliest, goofiest gadget to the darkest, most dismal, fearful moment, all in one. I want to say one comic. Really, it's not, because it changed names so many times and went through different iterations. But one long, unbroken streak that now sits as 3 omnibuses on my shelf, touched on every important aspect of it.
So I am going with a book that I loved. I read this again quite recently, and it cemented why I love it. I am talking about Seconds by Brian Lee O'Malley, which is the often under talked about sort of go at things he did after Scott Pilgrim.
Okay. I was going to ask if it was before or after Scott, so that makes sense.
I think it was afterwards. You can definitely see a lot of similarities between Scott Pilgrim and Seconds in the artwork. And I think in one of the panels, you can see like Scott Pilgrim just in the background as like, haha, you remember him, right? But it is a really heartwarming and gut-punching story about making mistakes and dealing with them, and that you can't rewrite the past no matter how much you try, and even if you could, it probably wouldn't go the way you think. It has a really simple story concept of when this character writes down her mistakes in a notebook and eats a mushroom, she can have another go at things, and immediately begins taking advantage of this to try and make her life perfect. It is heartwarming, it's gut-wrenching at times. It made me feel a lot of things. I don't have enough praise for this book.
I need to check it
sounds
out for sure
cool.
because I really love Scott Pilgrim. So is it
Mm.
is it a multi-volume thing like Scott Pilgrim, or is this a one shot story? Okay, one and
I'll
done.
have to check that out.
Just one shot story, yeah. This is the story that I buy people for birthdays and Christmas who liked Scott Pilgrim but don't read comics but want to. Second is what I buy them.
Because it's one volume, that makes sense. Yeah.
Exactly. There's no like further reading. It's a very simple one and done story. It's a very pretty book, so it just fits all purposes, and it just has a truly phenomenal story.
Well, we're here. I will say Scott Pilgrim almost made my movies list. I love
Scott
that
Pilgrim
movie
almost
a lot.
made my movie list. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, it's so good, but it barely missed out.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think I know Keegan's last
Yeah,
pick.
I'm sure.
Hmm.
I'm sure that my number one on comics is an absolute shock to everybody. No one ever saw it coming. No one ever could have guessed that it is Donny Cates' run on Venom. I know. It's like not my entire brand. Look, I used to hate symbiote stuff. I've said it a million times. I used to think that symbiote stuff was cringy and dumb and bad. And then as I was getting back into comics, my buddy that suggested that I get on to Far Sector and all that was like, look, I know, but check out King in Black. Just check out King in Black. So I started picking up King in Black as it was starting to wrap up. I think it was around that time. And I was just taken by it. I was just absolutely obsessed with like this imagining of Eddie Brock and the way that Donnie writes his characters and the action and the humor, all of it it blends very well. So I said, all right, I'm going to go back. I'm going to use my Marvel Unlimited subscription for what it's actually supposed to be used for. And I'm going to read this whole run. It made Venom and Eddie Brock my favorite superhero.
That's awesome.
Like full stops favorite. Something about the fact of just embracing the idea that Eddie is this absolute mess up of a person. Can't seem to get anything right. But then also embracing the idea that even though he can't get anything right and he's always messing up and he's always losing, he always finds a way to come back. And I identify with that a lot. I've had a lot of like missteps in my life. I've managed to somehow get to where I am now. So I have like an emotional connection to that and a weird identifying thing with Eddie Brock. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I do. So the mantra of, I'm the comeback king, I'm the man of 1,000 second chances. It gets me to my core, and I will always sing the praises of Donnie himself and his run on Venom. Also, Ryan Stegman's art is incredible, but
Stegman is a mastermind.
Yeah.
I am so ready for Vanish to start back up again. Their current Image book. I love that duo. They're fantastic together.
I mean, Vanish is so much fun because it's that 90s-ish stuff with the awareness that Cates brings to it. You're at a wizard school and it's kind of evil, and the kid pulls out a gun and just says, "Fuck magic."
Oh god, that's
all
like a panel.
All I could think about when people are so busy wanting to play the wizard game, let's play the wizard game. All I could think is why isn't there a Vanish game yet?
That's what I'm saying.
Fuck
mods,
magic,
baby, mods.
All right, so my third pick is diving into indie comics, and some people point to the birth of Image in the 90s when they want to talk about the potential of creator owned, and there's kind of a second major age in the early 2000s. Walking Dead took off, Invincible took off, you had the birth of stuff like Sweet Tooth and Scalped, and there was some other creator owned stuff. And then kind of when you got into the 2010s, people will point to Saga and Monstrous, and then now it just feels like we're in this true anything goes. You can get any. But to me, the comic that showed the true potential of what independent comics could do came out right before kind of the sagas hit, is a book called Chew by John Layman and Rob Guillory. Either of you read it or heard of it?
I have not read it.
I haven't read it, but I know of it.
Okay. So it's a story about a U.S. Food and Drug Administration agent, because it takes place in a world where a avian flu has killed a large portion of the planet, and chicken and all other bird-related meats are illegal. And the FBI and the CIA and all the other crime fighting federal agencies all have less authority than the FDA now. And Tony Chu, our hero, becomes their top guy because he is a cybopath. So he gets psychic impressions from anything he eats. So he can only eat beets because that's the only food that he doesn't get graphic, vivid imagery from of how they died. So if he eats any meat, he sees the brutal process of how they died. You can probably see where this is going. He solves murders by tasting the corpses. And the book is 60 issues long, and it's simultaneously a great procedural crime book because he solves a murder every arc. He's solving the international conspiracy that is the FDA and everything going on there. He's solving his interpersonal crises because his family all have other similarly ridiculous psychic powers of various natures. And in the end, there's time travel, there's kids he didn't know about. It's just a beautiful, fantastic book that, to me, more than Invincible or The Walking Dead, and I think there's probably been better since, but to me, it was the first truly great, truly could only be done in comics, 60 issue, front to back, had a conclusive ending saga. I just love that it held a consistent quality from start to end in a way that Walking Dead to me sagged because he couldn't let it go in the amount of time it should have ended. Invincible similarly had some rough spots in the middle. A lot of the ones in the 90s that I hold really close to my heart. I love Savage Dragon, but it's 300 issues in. It's just like superhero comics now. A lot of the Jeff Lemire stuff was shorter stories. This was 60 full issues, so it was a full 5-year story, but it was clear he had a beginning, a middle, and an end he wanted to tell, and their chemistry was amazing, and it just was that mesh of humor and storytelling that it just will always be a defining. When people ask me like, what's the indie comic, what's the image book that I should read first, I point to Chew because I love it. And don't get it confused. A couple years ago, he started a spin-off that has a very similar look to it. That's about Tony's sister. That's Chew, but spelled C-H-U. And it's only got 2 arcs in. It's not quite as good because Rob Guillory is busy drawing Farmhand, so he didn't come back to draw that. It's worth a read, but read Chew, C-H-E-W first. Don't make the mistake of reading Chew first.
I'll have to check that out. It sounds.
Yeah.
Before you judge what these guys watched, remember you're watching them right now. Glass Houses.
Up first, I have a British crime comedy. I suppose you'd call it a British American crime comedy. By director Guy Ritchie.
That doesn't narrow it down at all.
I love Guy Ritchie.
Guy Ritchie's
I
awesome.
am, of course, talking about Snatch.
Okay.
Snatch is, I think, the first 15 film I watched. I think in America, 15 is like rated M or rated R or something.
Yeah, so our movie ratings are R, which is 17, and PG-13. So sounds like yours is in the middle of those two. But
yeah. So I watched this with my stepdad, and I was under strict instructions to don't tell your mother that I let you watch this, and it was one of those films that immediately just stuck out to me with its very unique style, because Guy Ritchie has a very unique style similar to Edgar Wright, in the fact that just from watching the film you can tell it's a Guy Ritchie film, and it has, I think, some of the best character names in a crime film. So like Bullet Tooth Tony and Frankie Four Fingers, all very, very typical crime names, but it's just one of those films that I don't think I've ever watched a crime film quite like it. And sure, it has got the film features Brad Pitt as the Irish boxer, but it uses a particular word to describe him, which is in a lot of places considered a slur for the traveling community, which now I know that, I obviously don't say it, but back when I was like 15, 16, I would quote this film all the time, and it was one of those things that I would just go around saying, but I guess the lesson that I'm trying to teach is look up what words that you don't know about in films mean.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, right? we all learn and we grow. I also said a lot of dumb stuff when I was 15. Also,
Mm.
a lot of stuff that I learned from Guy Ritchie movies. So I
Yeah.
get it.
I feel like you don't become a good adult without being a shithead at 15. It's just
Oh,
like
yeah.
a
Yeah.
fact of life.
But yeah, I mean, I almost brought a different Guy Ritchie movie, and I almost brought an Edgar Wright movie. So
Yeah.
I'm with you on these choices.
Yeah, they're solid.
Which,
I will
which guy-
say you kept acting like you were narrowing the pool down, but like I feel like the Venn diagram of British American crime films and Guy Ritchie movies is a circle. Like there's very few films that are one of those and not the other.
very true.
So to you asking, which Guy Ritchie movie did I almost
Yeah.
bring? There was one that I wanted desperately to bring that I couldn't in good conscience bring because of one of its stars, which I know narrows it down so much. I wanted to bring The Man from
Oh.
Uncle,
Yeah, okay.
but
Yeah.
Armie Hammer is a cannibal, so no, allegedly. So no. And then I also kind of wanted to bring The Gentleman because I love The Gentleman.
Good film.
And then I almost brought Hot Fuzz for my Edgar Wright, but
Yeah.
I love Hot Fuzz.
Fun fact. So Hot Fuzz was filmed in a village called Wells, which is about a 5-minute bus journey from where I went to college.
oh,
I went to Wells quite a few times. Lovely place.
Did their police force seem normal?
No, they seemed a little strange.
was it for the greater good though?
The greater good.
The greater good. But no, phenomenal choice, by the way. I want to stress, phenomenal choice.
Great choice.
For me, since I didn't end up bringing a Guy Ritchie and I didn't end up bringing an Edgar Wright, I did bring my favorite director, Martin McDonagh. And
I got one too.
ooh, I had a really hard time choosing one of Martin McDonagh's films. I love all 4 of his films so very much, but I think I have to go with In Bruges.
We're twinning.
In Bruges. It's just such a phenomenally fun film. I think that Colin Farrell and Brendan Gleeson is like underrated duo of like greatness, like top 10 underrated duos in acting.
Completely.
I love them. I think Colin Farrell is at his best when he's doing weird character work, which speaks to The Gentleman because his role in The Gentleman is phenomenal.
Yeah.
But that's what I love about all of these 3 directors. Actually, it's like the really good character work that they do. But In Bruges, phenomenal movie. It has a lot of like dark humor that I find very funny, but it also has a lot of heart to it, and it's very sorrowful too, which I think is kind of Martin McDonagh's wheelhouse of like funny and weird and sad. I just love In Bruges a lot. And Ray Fiennes is a like kind of a villain. Like, get out of town. It's super good. Also a movie that features a couple of derogatory terms that we shouldn't say. But this one about the community of shorter folk, and yeah.
Well,
Love
you
it.
ruined my order because I was gonna go with my nostalgic '90s like thing first in each category, but I'll just talk about In Bruges so that like, we get it out of the way. One, I think it's really funny that we, out of all the movies to be double represented in Bruges,
Bruges.
This was a movie that came out when I worked at the movie theater here locally. I was 16. No one had ever heard of it. I mean, it's McDonough's first movie, right? Or was it?
Yeah, it's McDonough's first movie.
Yeah. It kind of it didn't have like a standard wide release, so we got it after it had been out a little bit. So like there was a little bit of buzz of people saying like, "Oh, you should see it," but it just looked weird from the trailers. And I remember it was senior year of high school, or maybe I was going to the community college. So maybe it was the year after high school, but whatever it was, getting off work, texting one of my buddies with like you want to hit up the theater? Because that's what we did on weekdays. If we weren't working and we knew they were empty, so the bosses didn't care if we just showed up and watched whatever was on. So we showed up, and it just happened to be about to start. So we went in to watch it, and blew us away. Like, out of every film that came out while I worked there, it's the one that has stuck with me the most. We fought hard to get everyone to go watch it. Whole lot of our fellow teenage coworkers didn't get it because it is a very specific style of humor. It's a very specific kind of story. Like Keegan said, it's sorrowful. It really emotionally driven, but in a specific direction. So it didn't click with everyone, but with me and this buddy, it clicked so hard for us, and we just became the biggest champions for it. And then everything he's come out with since has been really great. He's easily in my top 3 directors, but nothing has hit the peaks of In Bruges for me either. Just, it has defined a certain dark humor for me since I was a teenager, of just like if, and actually it's interesting because a lot of my stuff I've named in other genres and other things, that like, it's not just in film, but if you can combine humor into like that kind of mournful storytelling, like that's peak storytelling for me. Like, if you can make me laugh and cry at the same time and feel like a sick bastard for doing both, like, you have made a masterpiece in my mind.
I can't hear on Raglan Road without crying my eyes out at this point.
All right, Owen, what's your deuce?
So, Colin Farrell is a weird little dude, right? He plays weird little dudes. So let's
just gonna
have
get some weird stuff I'm gonna have to edit out. Like, I feel like we're going a weird road right now.
No, but I do feel like we are about to have a rather engaging discussion, Rod, because my pick is The Batman by Matt Reeves.
Let's go! Let's go! Let's go! The Penguin? The Penguin? The Penguin?
The Penguin.
He'll come back.
He might come back.
I don't think he'll come back.
Oh.
Go ahead. Say what you have to say.
So, I had been waiting for a film like this for quite some time. I know that some people had some issues with how the detective side of Batman was shown. And sure, it was a little edgy, just a little bit. But I feel like that was good. I feel like the I feel like the detective side of Batman was shown quite well in the standpoint of the early detective years of Batman. And I am really, really happy that we're getting more of this universe, more of this Batman. I feel like this is going to be a really angry letter that's going to get mailed to my house.
It's okay. He'll have to make a copy. What's that?
BRB.
Yeah. Okay. That's it. Yeah.
I genuinely really love this film. I have the Lego Batmobile from that film down there.
Me too.
Hell yeah. I understand why people didn't like this film and why certain people didn't get along with this film. I, however, very much did. Rod, do you have any opinions? Anything you'd like to share with the class?
So I also love this movie. And the reason why I also love this movie is I can relate to a Batman that gets in his feelings and broods to Nirvana, because that was my entire freshman year of high school. Something in the Way is my favorite Nirvana song, and I would sit in a dark room and listen to it. So I felt seen. Colin Farrell as the Penguin. I mean, yes, could you have employed Richard Kind? Absolutely, because they look identical. But Colin Farrell knocks it out of the park as the Penguin. And some people may say things such as, the Riddler's riddles were, I believe, kindergarten level or preschool level riddles that anyone could figure out. And I understand that. However, having played D&D for about a decade, I can tell you that 7 adults cannot figure out kindergarten riddles very easily. Sometimes they get so frustrated with kindergarten riddles that they instead fight doors. So, I think there's something to it. I love this movie too. Rod?
I like a Batman who can solve crime.
Yeah. He's figuring it out, though.
But he
He's
doesn't.
getting there.
He gets there
He's
after
getting there.
people die in shopping. Like, his version of solving crime was, oh, that corpse has a note on it. Like, that's not solving a crime.
Well, now, I don't want to nitpick because it's not my corner, but solving a crime, you're still figuring out who did the murder. That's a solve. You're thinking about stopping crime.
Did he solve the murders? Doesn't Riddler end up just revealing he did it all?
I mean, it's a confession, not a solve.
Solved by default.
Ave Maria.
We are all joking because I have very publicly made it part of my persona that I think the movie is just okay. Like, I don't even hate the movie. I have always said it is a completely average movie to me.
This is that Nerdy Papa Bear revisionist history.
It is not.
There is no TikTok in which you say this movie is just okay. That's like me saying that I kind of like The Rock. Okay?
No. All of my jokes are very hard hitting, but if you look at all of them, I never say I hate the movie. I think Batman deserves better. I think it is bottom tier. I think every animated film is better than it, but that's because all the animated movies are great.
Yeah, the animated's a whole nother. I'll give you that, but that's because the animated is like a whole nother echelon.
Like, that's how this all started. Was someone in a comment thread had said it was the best Batman adaptation ever, and I said it doesn't even make the top 10 best Batman movies. Like,
I will say it's my favorite live action Batman.
Yeah, but you have to qualify live action. And see, I don't agree with that, but even then, like, even as the best live action, it's not in the top 10 best of Batman movie period. There is 10 better animated movies than any of the live action.
I can let you have that.
Out of curiosity, what is your favorite live action Batman film?
My favorite and the best are going to be two different answers.
What's your favorite?
I think my favorite is Burton. Like, it's the nostalgic favorite. I think Batman Begins is the best on-screen live-action adaptation of the character. I think that was before Nolan got too in his head with some of the excess he did, and Liam Neeson made the best straight villain. Like, it was the best film of the live-action adaptations, and the Tim Burton one is just the most fun to me. But
that's
a fine choice.
I like that. All right.
I'm sorry I took over your pick with my pouting.
I absolutely want that moment as a clip.
Yeah, it's good. Also, you didn't have your headphones on, but while you were gone, I essentially just chanted Penguin for a minute straight. So
that's pretty great.
So we're on number 2, right?
I don't know, because I'm still half asleep because we talked about the most boring movie ever. So let me wake up.
All right.
Number 2.
That was your number 2?
Yeah.
Okay, so my number 2. Another choice that comes from a director that is known for some problematic choices, and I acknowledge this. He didn't direct this movie, though. He only wrote it. Quentin Tarantino wrote it. True
Yeah, okay.
Romance. I love, 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 love True Romance. It is such a good movie. Christian Slater's Clarence Worley. Patricia Arquette is Alabama. They're doing things. They're killing pimps named Drexel, played by Gary Oldman. We got Christopher Walken and Dennis Hopper have one of the most intense showdowns of all time. Brad Pitt's in it too. He plays a stoner. It's a fun movie. I love it. It's just, I think there's something to that movie that I find really enjoyable, because the idea that at the end, spoiler alert for a very, very old movie, the three words that Alabama can't stop thinking about Clarence are not "I love you," despite being married and having a child. The three words that she can't stop thinking are "You're so cool." And I just like that.
It is a classic. I love that movie.
Yeah, I love True
It is very
Romance. There's problems, but I love it.
I can respect that choice.
It's hard to pick a classic movie that doesn't have at least some problems.
Oh, yeah.
But my second was in my actual lineup. My first pick is a problemless classic. I don't actually know. There probably is something problematic in there, but Groundhog Day. Forever has been just a defining piece of Rod lore. I watched it daily for much of my childhood because that's the time loop gimmick. Is it was the same day every day, and there was a solid. It was probably realistically only a few months, but it felt like years where I got home and while I ate my after school snack, I watched the VHS of Groundhog Day. It is just a classic. It's Bill Murray's best performance. And it has forever given me just an interest in time loop movies. You know, there's one of my favorite like fake trilogies is to watch it, Live, Die, Repeat, and Happy Death Day. To watch those three movies as like an unofficial official trilogy is always tons of fun.
If I can recommend you a film if you've never seen it, if you're a fan of time loops, have you ever watched or heard of the Ethan Hawke movie Predestination?
Heard of, have not watched it. It's good.
Go and watch it, and then let me know when you've watched it.
Okay.
Okay.
I will let you know. That might be my plan tonight now.
I really like it. I almost brought it.
Oh,
Actually.
okay.
It's,
that is high praise.
It's a film that I very much like because I never saw any of it coming.
Okay.
That's all I'll give you, but I do recommend you watch it.
Predestination?
Predestination. Thinking about it,
Am I gonna throw my headphones again, Owen?
No. This could technically be a time loop film depending on your view of it. And that is this film is Donnie Darko.
Oh, what a great movie.
I watched this film and didn't get it. I watched it, I think, with my stepbrother, and I just didn't get it. And then a few years later, I had the house to myself for the week, so I thought I would burn through some films to kill some time. And Donnie Darko was one of the ones I chose, and I immediately fell in love with it. I got what it was putting across. I thought that the actors and actresses filled their specific roles absolutely phenomenally. And ever since I've watched it, I can never stop thinking about the exchange where Donnie turns to Frank and says, "Why are you wearing that stupid rabbit suit?" And Frank responds, "Why are you wearing that stupid human suit?" It's just so good.
That one definitely went over my head the first time I watched it too.
Yeah.
I need to give like a modern rewatch because I haven't watched since probably high school, and it is definitely a classic.
Yeah, I have the poster for it on the outside of my bedroom door.
Okay,
The last pick.
last pick. I meant to preface all of my movie picks with a disclaimer, but then I got excited about Martin McDonagh. I eliminated Marvel and Star Wars movies from my list because I was like, if I'm doing those, then it's just going to be like 3 Star Wars movies, right? So I eliminated those from my list. So my number one, Everything, Everywhere, All at Once.
Yeah.
And I mean, you know, at this point, like, what can I say about this movie that hasn't been said by smarter people than me over the past year, right? I'm just spinning my wheels. But it's just such a beautiful movie. It's so funny. It's really impressive what they did with it. It makes me just feel so many emotions. I sob openly every time I watch it. It really gets to me. The talent in that movie is incredible. I mean, of course we have Michelle Yeoh. Of course we have Ki Hee Kwan. I feel like uh, I do feel like Stephanie Sue has kind of been lost in the mix of this movie award season because she does a fabulous job as their daughter in the movie.
Yeah.
But it's really, really hard when you're going up against the performances of Michelle Yeoh and Ki Hui Kwan in this movie because, wow.
Definitely.
And I don't, it's just, it's probably the best movie I have seen in years. Like, full stop best movie I have seen
It
in
was
years.
masterpiece. 100%.
Yeah. I so much of it, like the little jokes, like that are just so good, and some of the beautiful, beautiful cinematography, and it's just so good.
Definitely. Okay, so I am a much less cultured swine than Keegan, and I did not say no Star Wars movies. My last pick, the last pick of the episode, The Last Jedi. Not only because it's the thing that dethroned Empire Strikes Back in my mind as the best Star Wars movie, not only because it is a gorgeous film, not only because it redefined what it meant to be a Jedi in a really cool way that J.J. Abrams decided to take a giant dump on less than 2 full years later, but also because it's the thing that finally fully finalized my internal ability to say, I don't give a shit what the internet thinks. I watched as people tore this movie apart and still do. That movie has been out for over 5 years now. And still, I tried to be someone that talks about Star Wars more because I love the Star Wars books. I love the Star Wars expanded world. I love the comics. I love the High Republic. But you can't be a Star Wars person on the internet without constantly being barraged by Ryan Johnson ruined Star Wars. The Last Jedi is a terrible movie, just constantly being thrown at you. And like, it's a fucking masterpiece. So I'm okay if you don't like the movie, but the amount of vitriol people have for the movie is absurd. It did not do anything to personally ruin your childhood. And I think it's like objectively gorgeous. Even if you don't like the plot choices, which is silly, and the amount of people that were vicariously living through Luke Skywalker so they can't handle that he had human flaws is ridiculous. But the cinematography in that movie is unparalleled. The final scene with the red sand and all, just images that don't leave your brain. They're so gorgeous. So, third most influential film on my life, the most recent major influential film, Last Jedi.
I mean, I can agree to that. Last Jedi, it's definitely like Star Wars is one of those things where if you ask, depending on what day you ask me, my favorite Star Wars movie is different.
Sure.
But Last Jedi is in my rotation of 3, and it's Empire, Last Jedi, and Rogue One. Like,
Yeah.
you know, and that's not a bad rotation. I agree with you. I love it. I'm not going to sit here and argue with people that agree with me till I'm blue in the face. I'm just saying that when Luke's 2 mentors, when they failed, they became hermits. It only makes sense that when he fails as a mentor, that he becomes a hermit. It's the only thing he knows. Anyways,
Yeah,
I agree.
Well, also the acting like people can't continue to grow. Like
Yeah.
there's a section of the fandom that wants his growth at the end of Return of the Jedi to be a static thing, and suddenly he's Space Jesus. But that would have been a really boring rest of his life. Like,
Yeah.
he need, but whatever.
People don't grow and change, Rod.
Especially after they're like 15.
You should know this. Everyone is exactly the same as they were when they were a teenager.
All right, you guys ready to leave the bag?
Well, yeah.
Yep.
We've spent quite a bit of time in the bag
Oh,
today.
oh God!
We've
What did
spent
Matt Reeves do in here? That's almost as bad as the movie he made.
He did art. That's what he did.
He made an art in the bag.
Still better than Batman.
Oh.
Love you guys. I'm sorry.
No, it's
That's
okay.
it's okay. So I in our last episode, I obviously did ask a music question, and I quite enjoy putting you guys on the spot with a music question.
Okay.
However, before we do that, I would like Rod to atone for what he did, and I would like you to confess to our viewers what you willed into existence.
Oh, you're ruining it. I was going to start the next episode by making you guys look at that article.
Okay.
That was going to be my new thing. Was I was going to like segue you guys so that you didn't realize we were starting every episode, and then eventually you'd catch on. But that's okay.
We can cut this. That's fine.
Nah, it's okay. So what he is talking about in all of its glory. I had not heard about the Macho Man Randy Savage album in 10, 15 years. Definitely not heard about it in a long time. And the other day, I was just scrolling Bleeding Cool, and for National like Album Day or whatever they call it, Record Store Day.
Record Store Day.
They are putting out a special limited edition vinyl version of Macho Man Randy Savage's "Be a Man," and both Keegan and Owain have agreed that they're going to buy a copy in honor of Bag of Picks. So,
of all of the things that you could have willed into existence, you will that.
It's a great
and the
album.
Monkey Paw Curls once more.
I made my wife listen to the whole album on Spotify after. It was great.
And you're still married?
Oh yeah, she's birthing my daughters. That's why, like, because they're in there and like they're at that stage where they hear everything, so they had to absorb. It'll make them better people as they grow up.
So instead of like the whole classical music thing, it's Macho Man's raps.
You're telling me you do not consider man classical music?
I mean,
girls
not
That
Listen
is
to art.
almost as egregious as you saying the Batman is the best live action Batman movie.
What can
Almost
I
as
say?
egregious as that.
What can I say? I'm egregious.
All right. What's our music question that I'm not going to have a legitimate answer for this week?
What is your go-to karaoke song if you have one? I'm fully aware that karaoke isn't everyone's thing, but my personal answer is A Little Respect by Erasure. A very good song.
That's great. Erasure is fantastic. Underrated, I feel.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
Yeah. Mine. No, I'm not going to sing. Take Me Home, Country Roads, John Denver.
A fine choice.
Yeah. I'm no Mark Strong, but I try.
Oh. Don't bring up that scene. Please, no.
Tears.
Yeah.
regulators, but specifically the Nate Dogg half. So I need a good Warren G, or I'm not doing karaoke.
Fair enough.
Fair enough.
Fair enough.
That's our show. If you are out there and you don't already follow us on some form of media and have made it 2 hours and 15 minutes in, it'll be edited down. If you've made it all the way to the end and have not followed us, click the little button. We are on Spotify, Apple Music, Google Podcasts, whatever you listen to stuff on. If you find us out there in the ether, hit the little thumbs up or send a review. Our sister show, Araco Public Radio, is out there every week on Saturdays at 9 a.m. ish. We come out every Monday at 9 a.m. ish. And any last words, gentlemen?
The Penguin.
The Penguin.
The Penguin.
Batman's a great character. It would be great if we got a good movie someday.
Thanks for joining us in this week's Bag of Picks. If you like what you heard, don't forget to rate, comment, and subscribe, and even tell a friend to give us a listen. If you want to hear more of what we have to say, you can find us on TikTok. Rod is ThatNerdyPapaBear, Owen is TheBrokenRecord, and Keegan is BulkRanger.